Hello everyone, I'm hoping that you're fine wherever you are. It's a beautiful day right here in Kigali. Welcome to our third lesson of the topic leisure activities and tourism. And in this lesson, I want us to look at question and answer, where we look at a past paper question and we see how best we can answer it, which will give us some skills on answering future questions. And for those who have not subscribed, please subscribe to this channel so that we can keep it running. So let's get started. We have a question from 2018, which is November, October, Series 2. And remember that this topic is Section C, and it could either be number 6 or number 5. So this one was number 6, and let us see how it goes. Study figure 6.1. This is the graph they have given us, which shows information about the number of international tourists arriving in Corfu, a Greek island, between 2004 and 2013. So before you go even into the questions, I want you to first understand this graph. This is we call it a multiple line graph. You can see that we have two lines. Each is of a different pattern, which means it represents something else. And then we need to look at the vertical axis, which has a particular scale, 0, 100, 200. And that means that for every small square, we will get 100, we divide it by 5, and then we will find that each small square represents 20 tourists. And remember, on this level they said tourist arrivals in thousands. So for each figure here, we're going to add 3 zeros. So it is 100,000 tourists. And then on the horizontal axis, we have years. It starts from 2004 and ends in 2013. And you can see how they have plotted. So when you look on the upper line that has that is a thick continuous line, you see that it is incomplete. So that tells you that one of the question is going to be asking you to complete it. So we need to look at what each of these lines represent, and this is going to be found on the key, and the key is right here. So the thick continuous line shows the tourist arrivals by air, while the dotted line shows tourist arrivals on cruise ships. So let's go into the questions. Question 1, that is Roman 1. What is meant by a tourist? This was covered in lesson 1, where we looked at a series of key terms. And a tourist is a person who travels from one place to another for leisure. And Roman 2, complete figure 6.1. That is the graph by plotting the following information. Our 950,000 tourists arrived by air in 2013. So remember, the line that represents tourist by air is the continuous thick line. So it's what we're going to plot. So let's go to the graph and we see how we could plot. So remember, we said before we plot, we need to understand the scale, and it means that for each small square, it represents 20,000 tourists. So this is 2013 at the extreme end, and it is what they want us to plot. And looking at the numbers, that last, the last squares, the 5 last squares, it starts from 900,000 to 100,000. And they want us to plot 950,000. So that automatically means that we are going to look exactly in the half of those 5 squares, and that means 2.5 squares. And we put a star. You can see I have put a red star right there in the middle. And then after plotting, you go ahead and join the star you have made to the last star that was given in the exam. And that's how you get your 2 marks. And then question next, describe the changes in the number of tourists arriving on cruise ships between 2004 and 2013. You should include statistics in your answer. So we need to go back to the graph and we look at the line of tourist arrivals by the tourist arrivals on cruise ships. That's what the question says. And then, of course, we need to understand which line, and that is the dotted line, that line below. And we need to see how it goes. So you can see that from 2004 to 2006, the number of tourists were increasing, but not very much, because we can see that in 2004, it was 250,000 tourists, and by 2006, it had increased to 300,000 tourists. From there, you can see that the increase was rapid. You can see how steep the line gets up to 2013 right there. So you need to be able to include statistics in your answer. And if I can see the number of 2013, it is around 710, or you could even say 720,000 tourists. So let's look at how answers could appear. The number of tourists generally increased from 250,000 in 2004 to 710,000 by 2013. So there was a general increase from the beginning, 2004 to 2013. There is no single time that the tourists reduced. Okay, second sentence, we could say that there was a steep or rapid increase in the number of tourists from 2006, where it was 300,000 to 710,000 tourists by 2014. And then another answer for our third mark, the number of tourists in 2013 had increased almost 3 times from that of 2006. So basically, when you look at the increment, 2013 values are almost 3 times that of 2006. Let's look at question B. Study figure 6.2, which is an insert, a map showing Corfu along with figures 6.3, 6.4, and 6.5 also given in the insert, which are photographs taken in Corfu. Then the question says, suggest 3 different ways in which people who live in Corfu might benefit from tourism. In lesson 2 of this topic, we looked at the benefits or advantages of tourism, and here is the question that we are going to deal with. But first, we need to look at the insert and see what it has. So 6.2 figure there shows an insert, which is a map, and on the key, we can see that we have a resort. We all understand what a resort is: a beach, a historical site, port, camping. Those could be camping sites, airports, religious sites, and main roads. Remember what the question is asking: the benefits, how the people of Corfu might benefit from tourism. And 6.3 is a very beautiful picture which shows a bay, and you can see that along the bay there is a beach and people are there relaxing. We can see some boat, we can see another boat right there in the water, and then we can see a lot of houses, people around there, and then behind there we see some forests or even hills. And then another photograph we can also see right down here. We have a marina or a dock where boats can park. We see all over in the water there are so many boats moving around. We still see the hills back in the background and the thick vegetation. We also see right there people are swimming, others on the ship. We can see some other people behind there. On top of a cliff. It means they could have walked some distance to come around there, while this guy in the water could have dived from above this cliff on the left. So let's go ahead and see how the question can be answered. Remember, it is asking for benefits. So the first benefit, many jobs have been created. For example, people can work as resort managers. We saw on the map that there is a resort. We have tour guides where we saw some people walking around. They could be guided by a tour guide, and all these are sorts of jobs that people do, and when they do, they get incomes and they can be able to live better lives. Point number 2, over time, people who work may acquire essential skills such as management, which they can use in their daily lives. That even when the tourism sector is no longer relevant, people who have been working there have acquired skills that they can use in other areas of their lives, which is very important. Improvement of airport, we saw on the map, there is an airport. We also saw some roads. So improvement of airport and other transport facilities like roads, which is movement of people and their goods. Very important there. And next, the increase in number of tourists means more customers for local goods and services, for example, crafts, souvenirs, restaurants, shops, and hotels. On the pictures, we saw some buildings, especially in the second picture. We saw a lot of buildings. Some of those could be restaurants, could be craft shops, could be hotels. So when the tourists keep coming, these facilities get a lot of customers, or they get market. Next point, development of agriculture, where as more hotels and restaurants establish, they buy more agricultural products to prepare meals for tourists. So you can imagine that the hotels which are around this place serve tourists different kinds of meals. And where do they get the food? From the agricultural sector. So this is beneficial. There is cultural exchange, where local people may learn a new language and ways of dressing. Also, traditional culture is preserved. Remember that we mentioned that culture is one of the tourist attractions. So we have preservation of culture, which is very important. And of course, as tourists come, you find that people who directly interact or engage with them will certainly learn a language. Next, improvements in social amenities such as water supply and electricity. So a place that has so many tourists, we would expect that there is going to be constant or permanent water supply and good amount of electricity supply, which the local people definitely benefit from. So all those houses that we saw in the picture could be having electricity and running water. Very important. Next question, suggest 2 problems which tourism might cause for people who live in Corfu, and 2 problems which it might cause for the local natural environment. So they are asking for problems. This was also covered in lesson 2, where we have those problems and or disadvantages divided into the natural environment. We have the people or social culture, and remember we also had economics. So this question is asking for the problems to the people and then problems to the natural environment. So we also need to divide them in a way. And then let's go to the first answer. Noise around tourist resorts may be destructive to people who live around. So a lot of music, a lot of people shouting, swimming, a lot of boats moving in and out of the harbor. So this could cause a lot of noise, which makes it uncomfortable. Litter around major resorts. Litter, of course, we can look at rubbish that tourists keep dumping, maybe plastic bottles, remains of food, etc. So litter around major resorts may deteriorate our sanitation and could trigger spread of diseases. And it could also affect natural beauty of the place. So this rubbish, for example, if the rubbish is dumped around the beach or in the water, we could have a lot of problems. People can get sick, and that is not nice. And also the natural beauty. People need to look at something that looks nice. So if the place is all littered with a lot of rubbish, that means people would be disgusted for looking at such kind of environment. Another point, traffic congestion on roads, which leading to major tourist centers, and this may cause delays for people to go to work and also delivery of goods and services. We saw this as a big problem, that when there is a large number of tourists in an area, such a place would be so busy, so many people, so many cars. And if there is jam on the road, that means people who are going to work would delay, people who are coming from work would spend long time before reaching home, and that could cause problems that people don't spend more time with their families. And also those big trucks that are transporting goods and services could delay to deliver such things to where they are taking them. Another point, fumes from cars cause asthma to people. So of course, with the traffic jam, with so many cars, We have a lot of fumes, exhaust smoke, which can cause diseases such as asthma to people. Not nice at all. Loss of culture, and people tend to adopt the culture of foreigners. Definitely, in most cases, people tend to copy the things that the foreigners or the visitors do. For example, ways of dressing and, ways of doing different things. So culture may change over time, which is not very nice. And then let's look at loss of land for housing and farming, as much land is dedicated to tourist resorts like beaches, hotels, and national parks, or even zoos. That land that could have been used for settlement for people is dedicated, for example, to establish a zoo to attract tourists. People could be doing a lot of agriculture on the land that is now being used as a national park. So there is a lot of loss of land for the local people. Offensive behavior from tourists, such as drunkenness, prostitution, inappropriate dressing, these may be disrespectful to the local traditions. We have some things like short skirts, people dress and walk around in bikinis. We say these are disrespectful to the culture of the local people. Increase in prices, or what we call inflation, of locally produced goods and services. This is because, of course, the demand for some of these things is high, and tourists are willing to pay for higher prices. And now this affects the local people because they also have to pay this high price to benefit from some of those services. So it is very bad. Next, season unemployment. We looked at this and we said that tourism, especially in the tropical regions or even in all parts of the world, is a seasonal thing. In the tropical regions, we have our peak season in December and some parts of January and February. This is when a lot of people get jobs because there are so many tourists. And after this peak season, you're going to find that some people will remain without jobs. So, to the natural environment, of course, in your exam, you don't have to write so many because this question goes for 5 marks. So you can give only 3 points to the human and maybe 2 points to the natural environment. But for purposes of covering a wide range of answers, I am covering some good number of answers for different people. So pick the one that is easier for you to remember and life goes on. So to the natural environment, we could have deforestation, which may occur since land is needed to establish hotels, roads, campsites, etc. These may lead to loss of habitat for wild animals, causing them to migrate, or some of them might die. So forests are very important. Natural vegetation is very important for our ecosystem, but because of tourism, some of these trees are going to face problems. They will be cut down in order to create campsites, in order to construct roads or to construct hotels. And of course, if this happens, we will have animals suffering, having nothing to eat and no place to stay. So some of them might either die or they migrate to other places. Of course, this is also destructive to the food chain and generally the ecosystem, and animals may lack what to eat. So these points are connected, but you can score about 3 points by writing these sentences together. Okay, atmospheric pollution due to many cars on the road and an increase in the number of flights. So a major tourist resort, we expect that so many cars are moving around, taking tourists here and there. And of course, so many flights are coming in and out of the country, and this causes atmospheric pollution. And this can cause either global warming or greenhouse effect, and these things are not good to the natural environment. Actually, in these days of coronavirus, where many planes are grounded and many cars are parked, there are reports that pollution is actually reducing. This is one of the positive things that is coming out of this global pandemic of coronavirus. Pollution is reducing so much. The other point is water or sea pollution may increase from increased use of engine boats We saw so many boats around the place, and also many boats parked at the marina. So this could cause oil spills. We could have animals dying because of the oil that is being spilled in the water. So this is not good for our aquatic animals such as fish. Footpaths in or through forests may lead to soil erosion. Sometimes people don't walk through the designated footpaths and they walk through the natural vegetation, which is going to reduce, and in the end we have problems of soil erosion, which is not good for the environment. So let's take a look at another question. Using evidence from figure 6.2, which is the map, 6.3 and 6.4 and 6.5 only. Now, when they put the word only, and you can see how they have emphasized it by putting it in bold. So you need to use or to get answers only coming from these figures that I've mentioned. Explain why Corfu attracts tourists. So basically what this question is asking is, what are things that are in Corfu that attract tourists? And you need to explain them in good detail. So let's remind ourselves of the pictures or the figures. 6.2 is a map, and of course on this map we can see so many symbols which have been explained on the key. So we have a resort, we have a beach, we have historical site, we have a port, camping, we have airports, religious site, and roads. So that is figure 6.2. And this one, 6.3, you can see again the beach, the boats, the houses. Some of those are hotels. We can see hills, some people can call them mountains in the background, which are also covered with thick vegetation. And again, 6.4, you can see a very beautiful scenery right there. And in the foreground right here, you can see boats parked around. You can see also cars right there. So this is called a marina. So nice houses there with thick vegetation. And there is another ship right there in the middle, moving around. There is a big building right there which could be a big hotel. Hills in the back. And then let's take a look at another figure, 6.5. Here we have a guy that is swimming, 2 people near the boat also swimming. Actually, there are 3 people. And then we have high cliffs where we can see that people are moving, probably being guided by a tour guide, and moving around the place. We call it hiking. This guy could have dived from this upper place, so it is important that we remember some of these things. So let's look at answer number 1. Corfu attracts tourists because it has a number of long beaches in bays. We saw a bay with shallow, calm and clean water. You can even mention the color of water, clear blue, where tourists can go to relax, swim, sunbathe and engage in activities like boat riding. So you need to be able to write exact things that you have seen in the pictures and make your answer look very beautiful and well explained. So the attractions are mentioned and the activities that are being done are also mentioned. The seasides have cliffs where tourists can enjoy diving into the water. You saw the other guy swimming. He could have dived from the high cliff. Then there are many historical and religious sites which also attract people from within and outside the country. So on the map, remember we saw a historical site and a religious site. That means people come around to check some things in that sense. There is a marina, which can also be called a harbor, where boats and cruise ships can anchor to load and offload tourists. Very important, because boat riding or cruise ships are very important for tourists. Another point, there are forests and thick vegetation in which people can enjoy activities like hiking and game viewing. Hiking simply means walking through the forest or along a hilltop. And then within the forest, we expect that we have animals, some birds, some insects, which people can view, and we call this one game viewing. Another point, Kofu also has hills and mountains which form beautiful sceneries and attract tourists for sightseeing. Standing around an area and seeing how beautiful those hills are is very important, is an activity. And then we have mountain climbing also and hiking. If you remember the group of people that were standing on top of the cliff, those ones had walked around the area and that was their final destination. So that is a very important tourist attraction. And now this brings us to the end of our lesson 2. I hope that you have picked important ideas on how to answer questions. Be sure to read well, interpret the question, and follow instructions given to the question so that you can be able to score high marks. And once again, thank you for those who have subscribed. If you have not subscribed, please do so that you can keep this channel running. Catch you in the next lesson. Stay safe.